Hey everyone, my name is Tom, and this is the Trans Life Podcast. So, hello. So, I'm trying something different this time and recording the video as well as the audio. So, if you would like to watch me as I stumble my way through this podcast, you can head over to my YouTube channel, which is Tom_is_trans. And if you're already on my YouTube channel, hey, thanks for being here. So, I am reporting live from my new apartment and sitting at the kitchen counter, not in my comfortable chair, but on an uncomfortable stool because Darla, who is my cat, if you are not familiar, really likes my computer chair and has claimed it as her nap space. So, tragically, it is illegal to remove a cat from their chosen place of rest, so nothing I can do. But it's fine. It'll be fine. Okay, so thank you for coming back, if you've come back, and if this is your first episode of the Trans Life Podcast, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. So in the previous episode, we talked about that moment of realization, about realizing that you are trans. So in this episode, we are going to be talking about transitioning. So specifically, my own experiences with transitioning, because that is the only experience I can talk about because it is mine and I know about it. So, as I mentioned in the first episode, I realized I was trans twice. First when I was 19 or 20 years old, and then I told myself it was not true and went back in the closet for like 20 years. Not exactly 20, but almost 20. Yeah, almost 20 years. And then had the realization again during the pandemic in 2020. And finally, at that point, was able to accept it and move forward and transition. So, what did I do when I transitioned? Well, I'm going to tell you. So, 2020 was a year. Like, actually, it was about 3 years or more. It felt a lot longer than it was, and it continued a lot longer than it should have. But yeah, so in 2020, I did bake bread. That is one of the things I did. I played a lot of Stardew Valley, and that was actually what inspired me to want to bake bread. And I also tried growing some vegetables in my bedroom, which did not work out because they were immediately infested by bugs, and I ended up putting them out on the balcony and then eventually throwing them away because it was gross. So yeah, in terms of developing hobbies over the pandemic, I didn't do super well with that, but I did finally, come to terms with the fact that I was trans and like read so many memoirs and watch so many YouTube videos and just like acquire as much information as I could. But like many trans people, I still had that question of what if it's not real? What if I'm not really trans? How do I tell? So I thought, okay, before I move forward with anything, I need to get a therapist, and because a lot of the books that I had read talked about people who were questioning going to a therapist who could help them untangle that. So I was living in Virginia at the time, and and also it was the pandemic, so I couldn't really go anywhere. So I went with BetterHelp, which is it's an online service that helps you find therapists in your area who do like online visits and stuff, but they have to be from your state. A therapist from California could not therapize me, a resident of Virginia. It has to be someone in Virginia. So I filled out the questionnaire and everything, and I was matched with an older lady who unfortunately who was very nice but didn't know anything about trans stuff. She barely knew about queer stuff. So yeah, so basically like our sessions involved like me trying to get clarity and like wanting to be guided, but I ended up having to guide the sessions because she did not know much of anything and would ask me questions like, "Are you living as a man?" Like, what does that mean? What does that mean, ma'am? And she would also Google things while we were having our session. She would spend she had the barest minimum of tech savvy, like the barest minimum of knowledge of technology. And she would like slowly Google things one letter at a time while I was paying for our session. And then she would she would report back to me like these were not things I already knew. Like she would Google like transgender and then tell me some facts about transness that I already knew because I had already done a lot of research. So, she meant well. She meant very well. But one of the good things that she did do was encourage me to come out to my mom because I was telling her that I was really, really terrified about coming out to my family because, obviously that kind of thing. I mean, I didn't think that they would reject me, but I did know that it would change things forever. And I was really, really scared about that and just scared that they wouldn't, not that they would reject me, but that they wouldn't understand or they wouldn't be willing to go with me on this journey. But one good thing about having that therapist was that there was suddenly like a deadline because she tasked me with coming out to my mom, which, technically she probably should not have done that because it should be up to the person, but I'm glad that she did because I wanted to. So I told her that I wanted to come out to my mom, and so she said okay, and basically like told me to do it before our next meeting, which was 1 week later. So I did it because of that, because I had that imposed deadline. So I am thankful to her that she helped me move forward with things. And throughout the course of explaining to her all the things that she didn't know about being trans, I did realize that yes, I really, I was and I am. And so I was able to move forward with that. But yeah, I did not stay with her much longer than the first, like, I want to say I saw her for about a month before I was like, I don't need to pay $200 to spend like half of our sessions listening to her Google things. So, but yeah, so after I told my mom, I kind of felt like I could move forward with the physical side of the whole thing. I already had fairly short hair, but I did cut it shorter myself because it was the pandemic, and I don't know. Did you sound off in the comments if you too gave yourself an uneven and bad haircut, self-inflicted haircut during the pandemic? But that is what I did. With like I didn't. So basically, I had the bathroom mirror behind me, and I tried to tape a hand mirror to. I think I taped it to a broom handle, and then leaned the broom handle against like the wall in front of me so that I could see behind my. It didn't work very well, but I managed to cut my hair. So I cut my hair. For a long time, I had been drawn to clothing from the men's section of stores, but anytime I wore clothes like that, I felt just bad. Not because it didn't feel right, but because it felt too right, if that makes sense. So, like, there was a part of me that was actively rejecting that side of myself and how right it felt to be wearing clothes that felt right to me. I might have used the word right too much in that sentence, but you get the idea maybe. So finally, I was able to move past that and get some clothes that did feel right to me. So I started phasing out the more femme clothes and wearing more like t-shirts and polo shirts and button downs, and I already had quite a supply of flannel. So basically hair, wardrobe, I had already been phasing out makeup, so I think I was still wearing like foundation, blush, and eyeliner. but I stopped wearing it altogether. And I vividly remember when I was considering that, when I was considering not wearing makeup anymore, I remember looking at myself in the mirror and being like, but I look so weird without makeup. It looks wrong. It looks bad. I look terrible without makeup. And it really is just a matter of getting used to that sort of thing. Because, like, now when I look back at pictures of myself when I was wearing makeup, it just looks so weird and artificial. So, if you too are someone who wears makeup and wants to make the transition to not wearing it, trust me when I say that it will start to look normal. It's just that transition. That's a little bit difficult. But so I stopped wearing makeup, cut my hair short, got some binders, ordered some. Oh my god! I just put my foot in the water bowl. I just put my foot in the cat's water bowl, and my sock is very wet now, and I'm probably gonna need to replace that water, but I will do that in a moment. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, so I ordered some binders online, and this is of course not like office supply binder, but chest binder. So if you are not familiar, which is possible, a binder is kind of like it usually either looks like a tank top or a sports bra, except it's it's made to compress the chest area so that when you wear clothing over it, your chest appears flatter or flat. So the issue with that though is that I've always had like a sensitivity around like anything cutting into my stomach or my chest. So like for years I did not wear bras. Like I would get I would get a sports bra and cut off just the cup area and sew it into a tank top and wear that because I just could not have something constraining around my chest. So binders were an adventure. So I did end up getting some looser binders, which did not flatten perfectly, but luckily I wasn't super busty, so they worked pretty well for me. And I did get the zip up kind as well because as someone with anxiety and prone to panic attacks, I needed to be able to unzip it if I was feeling panicky so that I could take a deep breath and, have that moment of release. So, yeah, so I started wearing the binders, and at that time, I remember talking to a friend of mine about it and telling her that I didn't feel any desire to get surgery of any kind. But as time went on, just my dysphoria regarding my chest just got more and more and more severe. And so eventually I did finally decide that I wanted to get top surgery. But it was not something I wanted to do while I was still living in Virginia. Just in general, my experience in Virginia was not great in terms of many things, but especially in terms of exploring my transness. So like the very first day I went out wearing my binder, I was verbally abused by two different people at a bus stop, different bus stops actually, with regards to my gender. Like one of them was, and I've told this story before, but one of them was this lady who, as I walked by her, muttered something like, "Stupid bitch cutting your hair short like a man," or something like that, which just okay. And then when I was at the bus stop coming home on that same day, that same trip, within like an hour of the first instance, there was this guy who was very aggressively trying to figure out my gender by asking me questions and like loudly talking to his companion. Well, his exact words were, "Is it a boy or a girl?" while gesturing at me. So like what a time, folks. Yeah. So that and many other reasons led me to finally move back to Chicago, which is the place that I've lived most of my adult life, and was very glad to be back here. But so after I moved back here, the next thing I wanted to do before getting surgery was to start taking testosterone because the things that I had the most dysphoria about were my voice and my chest, which I'm sure is quite common. And there's also the fact that if you have the goal of being gendered correctly, if you want to avoid being misgendered by strangers, it's unfortunate, but voice and chest are two of the things that really help in terms of being gendered correctly. So I really wanted to start taking testosterone. And also because another thing that was giving me very bad dysphoria was having my period every month, which, would be bad enough. But I also happen to be the kind of person who would have very severe like pain and just feeling awful and being more prone to anxiety attacks and things like that during that period. And I got my period like every 3 weeks instead of every 4 weeks. So I would have like before the period, I would feel bad. During the period, I would feel bad. And a little bit after the period, I would feel bad. So I really only had like a week and a half of every month when I was feeling not awful. So like I had taken birth control to handle that before, but I wanted to move to testosterone as a way to deal with that felt a lot better for me. But as someone with anxiety, I am very terrified of change. And the idea of making a permanent change to my body scared the crap out of me. So even though it was a change that I wanted, I was very, very scared about it. So I spent a really long time thinking about it. And eventually I decided I decided that I did want to go on testosterone. But first of all, I wanted to prove to myself that it was possible to make a permanent change to my body that I would like. So I got a tattoo. So right after, this was only like a few months after I moved back to Chicago, I looked around and found a good tattoo parlor that was very queer friendly, and I got my tattoo of the Chicago Stars on my arm. And the reason I did that is, first of all, because Chicago feels like my home and probably always will no matter where I move. And also, coming back to Chicago was such a huge step for me in terms of being my own person and finally being able to live the life that feels right to me. So I got the tattoo. It didn't hurt as much as I was afraid it would. I was also afraid I might pass out because I received the lovely genetic gift from my mother, who has the same issue of I pass out if I get blood drawn, if I'm not lying flat on my back. So I hoped getting a tattoo would not cause the same issue, but nonetheless, I asked to recline while I was getting the tattoo. And then my second tattoo, I was sitting up and it was fine. So I think I'm okay. This is not wood, but I'm knocking on it. So, but yeah, so I got the tattoo and I felt great about it. I loved it. I still love it. And I just felt this rush of not courage, but this rush of like, yeah, I can do this. So I made an appointment with my doctor and I started on testosterone. I wanted to do the testosterone gel, not the injections, because I knew I could. There's no way. There's no way that I could do the needle. Yeah, so I spoke to my doctor and she said that most insurance companies, or at least many insurance companies, and definitely my insurance company, would not cover the gel unless the patient had tried the shots and for some reason they didn't work or something, or they were unable to use them. So luckily I found there's a website called Folks, which is spelled Folx, folks.com, and they get hormones and such to trans people around the country by mail. They have licensed clinicians working for them, and you do like a video call with them and they prescribe things and send them straight to your house, which is super convenient. It's a little bit expensive, but not terrible, and was definitely worth it for me and has been worth it for me because it meant that I could get the gel. So I had my appointment with the clinician and we talked about things. We talked about all the effects of testosterone and what I could expect and things like that. And finally, I got my very first. I had to sign for the package because Testosterone is a controlled substance. But yeah, so the package arrived, I signed for it, and it took me a good hour to work up the courage to apply my first dose. Like, I stood in the bathroom with the testosterone gel for a really, really long time before I found the courage to do it. And yeah, so basically with testosterone gel, you just apply it. I apply it to the tops of my legs. You can apply it, well, at that time I was doing my upper arms because you can do that as well, but I eventually switched to my legs because it's an area that's always covered, which I like better. So yeah, so I applied it, and I've heard that it's a myth that testosterone causes aggression, and I definitely didn't experience anything like that. The only thing I noticed really was that I had a little bit more energy, and obviously I felt good because I was doing something that felt right to me. And I was on too low of a dose at first, so my period did not go away for like 7 months, which was not fun. But eventually I got my dosage increased a bit, and that finally did it. So you sometimes have to play around with the dosage a little bit. Of course, talking to your doctor about it, which I spoke to the clinician and stuff, so we could figure that out. But you don't want to mess with that on your own. But and also I have to have regular blood tests to check my testosterone levels to make sure they're not too high, because fun fact, if your testosterone levels get too high, the testosterone converts into estrogen, and that is the opposite of what you want if you are a trans man taking testosterone. So don't just take lots of testosterone and think that that's gonna make you into a super guy, because it will not do that, and also it's dangerous to do that, so don't do that. But yeah, so yeah, things that I noticed, there are multiple things that happen when you go on testosterone, and one of them is you get facial hair sometimes, some people, but it takes a while. So for me, I had always had kind of basically I had been shaving my upper lip for a long time because I had always had kind of peach fuzz up there. So I stopped shaving that, and eventually I got like a little goatee-ish thing underneath. So that is the main facial hair I have, is like a mustachy type, like very light, and then a light little goatee soul patch type thing. I don't there's hair on my cheeks as well, but it's still very, very light and soft. But I do have like an annoying amount of hair on my neck, like right under my chin, which I should probably shave or trim or something, but I can't bear to get rid of that hair that's grown because it's one of the few things that shows people that I am a guy. One of the visual signs that I am a guy. So but yeah, so you grow hair in many places, some of them more welcome than others. And yeah, there's also of course, voice dropping. So I did not think my voice was dropping practically at all. But then I've been teaching some Japanese students English online over Zoom for quite some time. And one day, one of them asked me if I had a cold because of the way my voice sounded. And then I also did a thing where I went back and looked at a video of myself from pre-testosterone and realized, yes, in fact, my voice had been dropping. So yeah, so it can be very subtle, but it definitely dropped. And that was another thing that I was nervous about, because I was like, but it's my voice. I don't want my voice to change. I mean, I wanted it to be lower, but I was also scared of that change. So yeah, so I was scared of my voice dropping, but I ended up really liking the way that my voice sounds. The only sad thing is that as of now, almost, we'll say about 2.5 years in, my singing voice has not recovered. My voice still cracks a lot, and if I try to sing, there is a gap between my chest voice and my head voice that cannot be bridged without my voice cracking. So I'm hoping that someday that will not be the case, but as of now, I am trapped in puberty land when it comes to voice cracking and things like that. So, But, overall, it's not a huge deal. But if you are a singer, it is something. Different people report different things with that. But for me, it has kind of sabotaged my singing voice a bit. Yeah. So, testosterone. And then the next step after that was top surgery. Because, as I said before, my dysphoria over my chest was just so bad, so terrible. I hated everything about that part of my body. I felt awful anytime I had to look at it, but obviously I couldn't wear a binder all the time. And wearing a binder was, of course, very uncomfortable. So, and in the summertime, oh Lord. So, I did some research and I went to there's a local trans group that had an info session about top surgery, which was very helpful, and I learned a lot of cool stuff there. But I did a lot of research online, and I found a good surgeon and made an appointment to see her. But unfortunately, because she is a very good surgeon, her waiting list just to have a consultation was over a year. So I made the appointment in August of 2021, and then my appointment was September of 2022. And when I went in for the appointment, if I had paid via insurance, I would have had to wait another full year, almost, until August of 2023 in order to get the surgery. But because I opted to pay out of pocket, I was able to get a projected surgery date of April 2023. And that ended up being moved to the end of May later because my surgeon was having a baby. So she unfortunately could not perform surgery whilst giving birth and caring for that child. So I called the surgeon in August of 2021 and I had the surgery in May of 2023. Late May, like the end of May 2023. So, bit of a wait. But the surgeon was great. The results were great. I was so happy about all that. If you're interested in finding out more of that, I do have a video on my YouTube channel that I recorded shortly after getting the surgery. But we might talk more about that later. But for now, because this is getting a bit long, we'll just say that I finally was able to have the surgery. And, since then, and even before then, basically I am pretty much always gendered correctly when I'm out and about or with anyone I'm speaking to on the phone, in person, anything like that. One thing that's working against me is the fact that I am a short king. I am 5'4". So I always worry that people look at me from behind or something and think, or when I'm wearing a mask, I feel very afraid because when I'm wearing a mask, you can't see my facial hair. So I think, oh, people are going to misgender me then. But it happens very rarely, is what I'll say, that someone is not entirely sure of my gender. And then as soon as I speak, then they gender me correctly. So it's hard to explain the level of euphoria and rightness that comes with being gendered correctly and with people using the correct name for you especially. So unfortunately, some family members are still catching up because it's funny because people on the street will he, him, me without hesitation, but my family will still refer to me with feminine pronouns and will still dead name me from time to time, which it makes sense because we don't see each other all the time, and it's difficult for people who have known you a long time sometimes to change the way that they think of you. So, but I know that they're trying, so that's what matters. Okay, so I've rambled on for quite some time, and as should be very evident, I did not make any notes or write any kind of a script because I've decided that I want this podcast to be unscripted. So I know for the first episode, I jotted a few notes just to give myself kind of a basic outline, but I did none of that for this one, which you probably can tell. So, but anyway, so if you have transitioned, please tell me about it in the comments if you would like to share your story, or if you have any specific questions about transitioning or something you'd like to hear me talk more about or just talk about in general, definitely let me know in the comments, and I'll do my best to work it in a future episode. Okay, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Trans Life Podcast. Thank you very much for listening or watching if you're watching it. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. I don't know if I had like a special way that I closed out the podcast last time, so we're just gonna go with whatever for now. So, okay, bye.